Mac and cheese. Thomas Jefferson did not invent mac and cheese. His enslaved chef, James Hemings, did. Jefferson encountered pasta dishes in France and Italy and brought the concept home to Monticello, where Hemings developed the recipe that became the dish Americans now eat more of than any other country on Earth. Kraft put it in a box in 1937 for 19 cents during the Great Depression. Americans bought 8 million boxes in the first year alone. A founding father's dinner party curiosity became survival food, became the single most recognized comfort dish in American culture. The man who actually cooked it never got his name on the box. Grilled cheese and tomato soup. Grilled cheese was not always grilled. It started in the 1920s as an open-faced sandwich because sliced bread and affordable American cheese had both just become widely available at the same time. The second slice came later. The combination with tomato soup became standardized in American school cafeterias in the 1960s for one specific reason. It was the cheapest hot lunch the government could approve under federal nutrition guidelines. A budget decision from a school lunch program became the most nostalgic comfort meal in American childhood. Nobody dips a grilled cheese into tomato soup because a chef recommended it. They do it because their mother did. Cottage pie. Cottage pie and shepherd's pie are not the same dish. Shepherd's pie uses lamb, cottage pie uses beef. This distinction matters enormously to British people and to no one else. The name comes from 18th century Britain, when cottagers, meaning poor rural workers, used leftover roasted meat and covered it with mashed potato to stretch it further. The potato topping was practical, not decorative. It sealed in heat and moisture and turned scraps into a complete meal. By the 20th century, cottage pie had become a British school dinner staple, which is both a compliment and an explanation for why British people have complicated feelings about it. It is simultaneously the food of poverty, childhood, and genuine comfort. Buffalo. Buffalo wings were created in 1964 from a delivery mistake. The Anchor Bar in Buffalo, New York, received chicken wings instead of the parts they ordered. Instead of sending them back, Teresa Bellissimo fried them and covered them in hot sauce and butter. She had no plan. Americans now eat 1.4 billion buffalo wings on Super Bowl Sunday alone. One delivery mistake created an entire food category worth billions of dollars annually. Pancakes. Pancakes are one of the oldest foods in human history, with evidence of flat-grain cakes cooked on hot stones going back over 30,000 years. The American version, thick and fluffy, uses baking powder to create the rise. In 1889, Aunt Jemima became the first ready-mix pancake product ever sold, completely changing how Americans cooked breakfast at home. The world record for the most pancakes eaten in one sitting is 113. Mozzarella sticks. Mozzarella sticks were invented in American restaurants in the 1970s as appetizers specifically designed to be ordered while waiting for the main course. The concept of breading cheese and deep frying it produces a result where the exterior sets before the interior fully melts, creating the cheese pull effect that became the defining visual of the dish. PGI Fridays standardized the format nationally in the 1980s and distributed the recipe to their entire chain simultaneously. The cheese pull became a marketing tool before social media existed. Advertisements showing mozzarella sticks being pulled apart were among the most effective food advertisements of the 1980s. A stretching cheese visual sold more appetizers than any flavor description could. Chicken pot pie. Chicken pot pie traces directly to ancient Roman cooking, where meat and vegetables were baked inside pastry crusts as a preservation and serving vessel. English settlers brought the format to America in the 1600s and filled it with whatever was available. The individual pot pie format, a single ceramic dish with a pastry lid, became standardized in American home cooking in the 19th century. Swanson introduced the frozen pot pie in 1951. Americans bought them in quantities that suggested the country had been waiting for exactly this product. A Roman preservation technique became one of the best-selling frozen meals in American history. Apple pie. Apple pie is not American. The apple is not even originally American. Apples are native to Central Asia. The pie format came from England. The phrase American as apple pie appeared in American marketing in the early 20th century and became so effective that most Americans now genuinely believe apple pie is a native invention. The American version, with cinnamon-spiced apples and a double crust, became standardized through home economics education in the early 20th century, when cooking schools taught a single correct version to millions of students simultaneously. Every American family believes their version is correct. Every American family's version is slightly different. The marketing won completely. Bacon and eggs. Bacon and eggs became the defining American breakfast in the 1920s, largely because of a marketing campaign. Sigmund Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays, was hired by a bacon company to convince Americans that a hearty breakfast was healthier than a light one. He surveyed doctors, got them to recommend bacon and eggs, and published the results in newspapers nationwide. Within years, bacon and eggs had become the standard American morning meal and has remained there ever since. Hot honey fried chicken. Scientists who study flavor addiction call the combination of sweet, salty, and spicy hitting simultaneously the bliss point. Hot honey hits all three at once. A Brooklyn beekeeper started drizzling chili honey on pizza in 2010 as a hobby. By 2025, it was the most requested flavor at fast food chains across America. Your brain registers sweet first, then the heat arrives. By then, it's too late to stop eating. Cheesy scalloped potatoes. Scalloped potatoes appear on more American holiday tables than almost any other side dish. Thinly sliced potatoes baked in cream and cheese until the top layer crisps and the interior becomes soft enough to serve with a spoon. The argument about whether scalloped potatoes and au gratin potatoes are the same dish has never been resolved. Technically, scalloped uses cream sauce without cheese, and au gratin adds cheese on top. Most Americans use the terms interchangeably. Most French people would find this conversation exhausting. Every American family has a version and considers every other family's version slightly wrong. The holiday table scalloped potato debate has the same energy as the stuffing versus dressing argument and is equally unresolvable. Classic meatloaf. Every American family has a meatloaf recipe. No two are identical. Ground beef, breadcrumbs, egg, and whatever the family adds. Worcestershire, bell pepper, ketchup on top, brown sugar, a layer of bacon. The dish became standardized during the Great Depression when stretching meat with fillers was not a choice but a necessity. Home economists published meatloaf recipes in government pamphlets to teach families how to feed more people with less beef. The ketchup glaze on top became nearly universal because it was cheap, sweet, and caramelized beautifully in a home oven. Depression-era survival food became one of the most searched comfort meal recipes in the English-speaking world every single winter. French toast. French toast has nothing to do with France. The earliest known recipe appears in a Roman cookbook from the 4th century called Apicius, which describes bread soaked in milk and egg, then fried in oil. Medieval Europeans called it pain perdu in French, meaning lost bread, because it was a way to use stale bread that would otherwise be thrown away. The name French toast appeared in print in America in 1871 and stuck, even though the dish predates France as a country. Salisbury steak. Salisbury steak was invented by Dr. James Salisbury in 1888, who believed that Americans ate too many vegetables and that ground beef 3 times a day was the solution to most human illness. He was wrong about the medicine. He was accidentally right about the dinner. The dish, a seasoned beef patty smothered in brown onion gravy, became a staple of American TV dinners in the 1950s when frozen food companies needed something that survived freezing without becoming inedible. It did. Salisbury steak is now one of the most purchased frozen meals in the United States. A Victorian diet obsessive accidentally invented comfort food. Twice-baked potato. The twice-baked potato requires baking a potato, scooping out the flesh, mixing it with butter, cheese, and sour cream, stuffing it back into the skin, and baking it again. The process doubles the cooking time and triples the calorie count. It became a staple of American dinner parties in the 1950s and 1960s, when elaborate side dishes were considered a sign of good hosting. The twice-baked potato requires significantly more effort than its appearance suggests, which is precisely why serving it communicated something about the cook. Today, it appears on steakhouse menus across America, priced at a level that makes the effort economically rational. Potato skins. Potato skins were invented at TGI Fridays in the 1970s as a way to use the part of the potato that was being thrown away after making mashed potatoes and baked potatoes. A cook named Donna Rosenthal reportedly suggested keeping the skins, filling them with cheese and bacon, and selling them as an appetizer. TGI Fridays tested the idea, and it became one of the most ordered appetizers in American casual dining history. The potato skin transformed kitchen waste into a menu staple. Every sports bar in America serves some version of it today, and none of them invented it. Potato chips. Potato chips were invented in 1853 in Saratoga Springs, New York, by a chef named George Crumb. A customer repeatedly sent his fried potatoes back to the kitchen, complaining they were too thick and soggy. Crumb, frustrated, sliced the potatoes paper thin, fried them until crispy, and salted them heavily as a sarcastic response. The customer loved them. The dish spread across the country and became one of the most consumed snack foods in human history. Americans eat over 1.5 billion pounds of potato chips per year. A chef's act of frustration created a global industry worth over $30 billion. Bagel with cream cheese. The bagel originated in Jewish communities in Poland in the 17th century and was brought to New York by Eastern European Jewish immigrants in the late 1800s. The defining characteristic of a real bagel is that it is boiled before baking, which creates the chewy, dense interior and shiny crest. New York bagel makers claim their bagels taste different because of the minerals in New York City tap water. Cream cheese was invented in New York in 1872 by a dairyman named William Lawrence, making the combination entirely a New York creation. Onion rings. Onion rings and French fries have been competing for the same position on American menus since the 1960s, and the argument about which is better has never been resolved. The first published onion ring recipe appeared in a 1933 Crisco advertisement, making them a product of corporate food marketing rather than culinary tradition. Burger King introduced onion rings nationally in 1975, and they became the default alternative to fries at fast food chains across America. The ongoing debate about onion rings versus fries generates more passionate responses at American restaurants than most political discussions. Both sides have strong opinions. Neither side is changing their position. Pig in a blanket. Pigs in a blanket in America are cocktail sausages wrapped in crescent roll dough and baked until golden. The name appears in American cookbooks as early as 1957. They became the defining party appetizer of mid-20th century American home entertaining, appearing at every gathering from church potlucks to corporate cocktail parties. Pillsbury's crescent roll dough, introduced in 1965, made them a 5-minute preparation requiring no skill. A 2-ingredient appetizer that takes 5 minutes to make has appeared on more American party tables than any other single food in the past 60 years. Sloppy Joe. Nobody agrees on where the Sloppy Joe came from. One story credits a cook named Joe in a Sioux City, Iowa diner in the 1930s who added tomato sauce to loose meat sandwiches and refused to be neat about it. Another traces it to Sloppy Joe's bar in Havana, where Ernest Hemingway drank and a similar sandwich was served. Both stories are probably partially true and mostly mythology. What is certain is that ground beef and tomato sauce on a soft bun became a fixture of American school cafeterias, church potlucks, and home cooking because the ingredients are cheap and the preparation is forgiving. You cannot really overcook a Sloppy Joe. The sloppiness is structural. Stuffed bell pepper. Stuffed peppers appear in almost every cuisine that has access to both peppers and ground meat. The American version, a bell pepper filled with ground beef, rice, and tomato sauce, became a mid-century home cooking staple because it solved the weekly question of how to make ground beef feel like a complete, considered meal. The pepper acts as edible cookware. It holds the filling, adds sweetness as it roasts, and means no extra dish to wash. Home economics teachers across the United States used stuffed peppers as the canonical lesson in how to build a balanced meal in a single vessel. It is still one of the most pinned dinner recipes on every food platform every autumn, reliably without exception. Bolognese sauce. Bolognese is not spaghetti sauce with meat in it. Italians will correct you on this, and they will be right. The official recipe, registered with the Bologna Chamber of Commerce in 1982, specifies beef, pancetta, onion, carrot, celery, tomato paste, white wine, and milk. No garlic. No herbs beyond a bay leaf. The milk is not optional. It tenderizes the meat and rounds the acidity. The sauce should cook for a minimum of 2 hours. The version served at most Italian-American restaurants bears a loose resemblance to this. The version that became globally famous through jarred pasta sauce bears almost none. Bologna's government registered the recipe specifically because the rest of the world was getting it wrong. They have not stopped getting it wrong. Loaded baked potato. The baked potato existed for centuries as simple peasant food. The loaded version, topped with sour cream, bacon, cheddar cheese, and chives, was invented in American steakhouses in the 1950s and 1960s as a side dish that could justify a higher menu price. Wendy's introduced the loaded baked potato to fast food in 1983, and it became one of their most iconic menu items for decades. A baked potato costs pennies to produce. A loaded baked potato costs dollars to sell. The toppings are worth more than the potato. American restaurants understood this immediately. Nashville Hot. Nashville hot chicken was invented as an act of revenge that backfired. A woman made an extremely spiced chicken for her unfaithful partner, expecting the heat to punish him. He loved it. The Prince family developed this style from the 1930s onward. Applied to wings, the cayenne paste pressed into the hot skin after frying creates heat that builds with every bite rather than hitting immediately. Nashville hot wings remained a regional specialty for decades before national chains discovered them in the 2010s. The revenge dish that failed to punish anyone is now one of the most replicated flavors in American food. Tater tots. Tater tots were invented in 1953 by two brothers who founded Ore-Ida in Oregon. They had leftover potato scraps from cutting French fries and instead of discarding them, chopped the scraps, mixed them with flour and seasoning, and extruded them into small cylinders. They sold the first bags for 10 cents. Americans were initially reluctant to pay for what looked like potato scraps. Ore-Ida lowered the price to almost nothing and gave them away. Once Americans tasted them, full-price sales followed immediately. Today, Americans consume approximately 70 million pounds of tater tots per year.